being conducted via Zoom webinar, and everyone mute themselves if they're not muted. Nora, can you mute yourself? Nora, can you mute? Nope. Okay, Nora's gone. All right. Remotely via Zoom webinar with, I have lost track of how many school committee members we have here, but Ginny is absent and John is absent, but will be joining us later, and Nora seems to have disappeared. Will hopefully join us. There she is again. Nora, can you mute yourself though?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Per our remote participation policy, BEDJA. Public participation is possible via the Zoom link or call-in phone number. Our school committee meetings are also live streamed on YouTube, although public participation is not possible with that option. The link, phone number, and YouTube link are found on the posted agenda on the abschools.org calendar. This meeting is also being recorded and will be posted on Acton TV's website at actontv.org. Per our remote policy, all votes will be done by roll call. I will call each member's name and they will state how they vote. Thank you for joining us. So tonight is our last meeting for two of our longtime members, and I want to start with that as part of our welcome. Michael Bowe also had his last meeting already, but his term ended this year. So I want to just start by saying a thank you to Maya Minkin, Paul Murphy, and Michael Bowe for serving on the committee. Between the three of them, they represent 17 years of service, and their absence will be felt. I know that some members have prepared things to say this evening. As we move forward, but this because Maya and Paul are here to hear it. Michael is not. I'm going to start off by thanking Michael since he already had his last meeting. Michael served 2 years on the school committee and came to us after serving on the Boxborough FinCom. He was dedicated to transportation issues as well as transparency of the budget process. He served on both the budget subcommittee as well as the policy subcommittee, and most recently he was part of the debt service committee. Michael was passionate about his views and helped provide a different perspective to many committee discussions. We thank him for his service, and if there's anyone else who would like to share something about Michael, now is your opportunity. And if you raise your hand, I can certainly call on you. I don't know if anyone else had prepared something to say tonight. If not, then we can move on. Diane, Maya is next in alphabetical order. So I know that you had something prepared to say about Maya.
Thank you. Maya, is this your third or your fourth term? It's 3, right?
Oh, I thought it was 2.
No.
2 terms.
2 terms.
6+ years.
Okay. All right. So you started before me. I thought I had you at 9. So you did 6. Okay. Still, I cannot believe this is your last meeting. I really can't. So Maya has served on the superintendent safety task force. She did so in I think it was like 2014. She was the PTSO liaison. She lent her technical expertise as a member of the building committee before when it was at its inception, and whose work everyone knows resulted in our new school, which we will break ground for in the next few weeks, I guess. But her passion and her longstanding commitment was to the policy subcommittee, which she had been a member of for for all of your time here, I guess, pretty much. So I had the pleasure of sitting on policy with Maya several years ago, and I have to say I really admired her consistent commitment to crafting policy that used plain language and was readable and understandable to families. At meetings, Maya has an uncanny way of being honest, kind, and empathic, while at the same time critical and unflagging in her opinions about what is right and wrong for the students in this district. She holds people accountable. I saw that time and time again. After listening to Maya opine about something she feels very strongly about, you leave with an urgent sense of agency to do better for the students we are elected to serve, and you also feel heard and respected by her even when you disagree. Maya once literally jumped out of her seat during JD's school committee PowerPoint presentation on the Charter Road and the campus redesign. This was back on November 21st. She ran up to the screen and she spontaneously redesigned the area near the tennis courts on Mass Ave near the junior high. Why? Because she insisted that students have to have a shady and inviting place to hang out. That was just who she is. Maya, you have the mind and the soul of an artist. That tiny extension of Kelly's Corner in JD's PowerPoint that night was your canvas. You did not just see what was there in the slide. You saw what was possible. And that is how you see the world, and that is how you approach school committee work. Thank you for teaching me to see the world as a canvas rife with possibility. I am deeply grateful that your tenure coincided with mine, and I wish you the best as you move on to different canvases. Thank you for your service.
That was beautiful, Diane. I'm sure no one's going to want to follow up with that. Amy, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to say I'm really pissed off that I have to follow Diane, but I just want to say a little thing is that Maya and I joined together. So we went through the whole process just for our first year together. And one thing she said to me that has always stuck with me and was that she said, as long as we just keep our students as our true north and we make sure that our decisions, we keep that in mind, then we will continue and we will always make the right decision. So that is something I think about a lot.
Thanks, Amy. I want to chime in myself because Maya, you have made my time on school committee so incredible. Not only have you become an incredibly supportive friend who I know I can call and reach out to, but you know, you've shown me what everyone comes to school committee with something different. You know, some people come because they have a passion about special education, and some people come because they have a passion about finance and other kinds of things. And I think that you really have shown me that it does take everybody. You're not the loudest at meetings, but when you decide to speak and have something to share, it's incredibly important and incredibly thoughtful and incredibly important to moving the discussion forward. And I had the honor to serve with you on policy as well. And I have to say that there couldn't really be someone better on policy, because you would read through those policies and say, this isn't going to make sense to somebody who's reading it. And like, what is the point of a policy if no one can understand what it means? And so that's really stuck with me a lot. And it will going forward, because we won't have you on policy anymore. But I just want you to know that that was a really important thing that I think that you've contributed to this committee. So thank you so much. And I know that this won't be the last time that we talk, but I have really enjoyed my 3 years serving on the committee. Thank you. All right. Amy, I know you prepared something to say for Paul, so would you like to go?
I did. It is definitely my pleasure to get to say something about Paul and his 9 years on the committee. When I first joined, Paul was the first person to reach out and offer to help, to meet with me, to help, navigate this overwhelming process. And since then has become a good friend. Served on just about every committee and multiple roles, multiple times. But I would say that I think the one role that he took that was really important to the district was that he served on ALG for many years. And the relationships that he built on ALG with the other two boards, going out and having drinks, just really kind of building up friendships made the very difficult negotiating conversations much easier, because you felt like you understood the other person. So I really appreciate that. Paul has the biggest heart, and he has spent all of his years on the committee really thinking about students. And, when he talks, he's talking from his heart, and that he really cares about students. And I guess that's, I'm really going to miss your calming and caring presence. And favorite picture ever when we had school committee pictures on the website, Paul with his kitten. I mean, the best picture ever.
Thank you, Amy.
Adam?
Yeah, I wanted to say two quick things about Paul that I learned from watching him as a member of the school committee. The first was how to extremely respectfully disagree with somebody else's idea. I think Paul is the master at doing that. And then the second one, and I will continue to think of Paul every time we do this, is to always accept every donation with gratitude.
I agree with those sentiments. exactly, Adam. Paul, you've been a source of comfort to me. Like when you're always a good neutral party to ask questions and to see another more caring and empathetic side to something. You're a good balance check when it comes to that kind of thing. And I absolutely owe you a drink at True West because we sat down to have, a discussion, and Nate got stung by bees, and I had to leave mid conversation, and it was horrible. It was absolutely awful because we thought we were going to have to give an EpiPen, and Paul, I have not forgotten. So now that things have opened up, hopefully we can go and have that drink and just be friends, and we won't have to talk any things or anything like that.
I did finish your drink for you.
Oh, well, thank you. Excellent. All right. Well, we are so grateful for your service, both of you, and you will both be greatly missed. Okay.
Peter wanted to say something.
Oh, you wanted to say? Sorry, Peter. Sorry.
I'll be brief, but I just want to say thank you to both of you. I think you both have different perspectives and different ways about you, but what I appreciate about both of you is you both definitely have students at the core of all of your beliefs. It's been a pleasure to be working with you over the last couple of years since I've been here, and I'll be forever grateful for everything you've done. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Sorry, Peter, I didn't mean to cut you out of that discussion.
I get it, Tessa. I understand.
The participants hand raising thing was in front of your picture on my screen. So, okay. I just want to note that there has been a change to the annual town meeting schedule, and that Boxboroughs will now be held the same night as Acton's, June 29th. There was a posting issue, and so now we will all get to enjoy our socially distanced town meetings simultaneously. And John is not with us right now because he's at Acton pre-town meeting, and I don't know, we'll be going over our presentations next Monday, and then presenting on the 29th. So item 3.2 is public participation. Anyone that wishes to participate tonight, an item that is not listed on the agenda, is welcome to raise their hand, and you have up to 3 minutes to speak. I don't see any hands. So with that said, we can move on. I don't think I saw our high school representatives. They're now done with school, so I imagine that they have checked out. Yes, Angie, did you have something to share?
No.
Oh, sorry. It looked like you had your hand up. Okay. So then that will bring us to Peter for your school closure update.
So thank you, Tessa. First, I just want to say thank you to all of you for all of your support during the closure. This has been a long stretch. I want to just commend our high school administration and staff one more time for all of the work that they did toward putting on a commencement ceremony for the students. It seems like it should be something easy to hire a company to come in and put together, an online commencement ceremony. But I know, particularly Lynn Hurley, Genevieve at the high school put in just hours and hours of time into making sure that, our kids were celebrated appropriately as they left us. So I want to recognize that. I also want to recognize our elementary principals for all of the work that they put in to providing a 6th grade send-off that was also memorable for those students. I think each elementary school really tried to capture the core of their community and have send-offs that were going to be meaningful for students, even though it may not have been the traditional send-off. We are continuing to look forward into next year. I do not have any updates in terms of planning for next year. We continue to await guidance from the state around, what school might look like in the fall. We did understand from our last commissioner meeting that I had that we would receive guidance mid to late this week. So the good news is we still have the possibility that that could occur. We are hoping to have that. I do think once we receive the guidance from the state, it will likely take our planning teams 2 to 3 weeks to be able to digest that, dissect it a bit, and put together kind of an initial framework of our plan, because we just don't know what we're going to see. And I need to make sure our teams have ample time to be able to look at that. We are working on a transition website, and what we hope to do is as soon as we have a framework of what we can release to the community, so parents and our staff can start to plan, we will also release that website simultaneously. So there's one one consistent place that all of our families can continue to go throughout the summer to get up to date information. I do recognize that it's frustrating for everyone involved that we don't have guidance about what next year looks like. But I think we're in a waiting game. When we do get guidance, I anticipate we'll see initial guidance out of the state that will then be updated later in summer. The reason that that's the case is I think even the state understands, well, I don't even the state understands, the state understands that the course of the virus, really can't be determined at this time. And Massachusetts has been trending much to the positive, to the point that I do, in my heart, believe we will be welcoming back our kids to the campus in some form. But I think the state wants to make sure that they don't put anything down that says final guidance until we get really close to opening, just in the event that something shifts. I think they're making sure that the message to all of the communities is consistent and that we just don't know what we don't know right now. So more to come in terms of planning for that. A couple of weeks ago, we sent out a letter from our leadership team just expressing our support for all of the recent protests at the school system. And some of the feedback we received, which we really took to heart as a leadership team, was, we appreciate the words, but we need to now see some actions. And we need to know what the schools are really going to do to combat racism in our community. We know it's a problem everywhere, but that everywhere includes us. And so our leadership has thought about this quite a bit. And, through Don and my conversations about this, with some of our principals and other leadership team, we really thought about a lot of the language in our strategy had been focused on building inclusive schools. And one of the things that we came to as a really important conclusion is that I think we need to pivot from this idea of just building inclusive schools to really becoming explicitly anti-racist in our approach to how we want to build the culture of our schools and our community. We'll talk to you more as we go through, but the premise of being anti-racist is essentially that you can't choose to be neutral on this. You can't say I'm not a racist, or we don't have, we're choosing to be non-racist. There's no such thing. It's either you're going to continue to support the systems that have led to the issues we're seeing in society, and where we have people who are continually oppressed over time, or you can choose to start to dismantle those systems and really think deeply about the processes that you're going to put into place. Our leadership team had these discussions, and we chose to pivot our strategy a bit to be much more actively anti-racist in the approach. We also know we're in the middle of a pandemic, and we are planning for something that really is unprecedented in terms of the need to plan for next year under significantly unknown circumstances. So, we would love to charge really head on into all of the work to become truly anti-racist, but we also know we have to welcome our students back in the fall in really 2 short months. So what we wanted to do was put together some really clear actions where we can commit to our community about what they should expect to see from us between now and the time our students return in the fall. We then hope that as the rest of the new committee is seated, we can work with our committee over the summer to the fall to think about more long-term solutions and strategies that we want to have in place. And in all honesty, we didn't want to put out a long-term plan knowing our committee was in a state of transition. We thought it was important to be able to work with the new members as well as the existing and returning members to help develop that plan. So things we're committing to. And a lot of this was based on community feedback and student feedback that we've received over the course of the last few months. So number one, we're going to implement an anonymous reporting system that will allow us to better collect information about incidents of bias, including microaggressions, discrimination, bullying, and harassment. An important first step in creating a more open dialogue with our student, staff, and community around the issues that our stakeholders experience in our schools. We know that we investigate claims of harassment and bullying, but we don't have a great system of understanding all of the things that are taking place. And the idea of implementing an anonymous reporting system is really to make sure that we have the right data and we're being transparent about what we have to solve for issues. Second, we are going to reconvene our family advisory group for diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you recall, this was halted during our closure, which is really unfortunate, particularly in light of the recent events. I feel very, very badly that we didn't continue with that. But as you know, we stopped just about every major initiative we had. We do commit to meeting with that group over the summer and working with that group to develop a longer term plan to review not only our policies, but to be able to use that group to help review some of our curriculum through both anti-racist and anti-bias lenses. The third commitment we're making is that prior to our transition back to school, we're going to provide our educators with professional learning that will support them to first recognize, respond, and stop incidents of bias, racism, and microaggression. And second, implement age-appropriate curriculum learning activities and classroom discussions around racism, bias, and social justice for all of our students pre-K through 12. That obviously looks very, very different. You do not talk to a preschooler about racism the same way you would talk to a student in grade 12, but we will be implementing activities and appropriate curriculum at all of our grade levels as we return to school. We also commit to continuing to develop affinity groups for both our students and educators of color, provide them with opportunities to engage in dialogue about issues that are important to them, as well as to be able to share their unique perspectives and experiences. This is something we've heard asked from our students, and it's something we've heard asked from our faculty now as well. Finally, our fifth commitment right now is that our SEED trainers, the Seeking Educational Equity and Diversity trainers, have developed a new professional learning opportunity for AB educators that they're going to undertake this summer, and that is to help our educators, rather than it's a major step to understand your own implicit biases, but this is now focused on helping our educators implement anti-racist curricula and have those brave dialogues in their classrooms, because we know those have to be done sensitively and consistently across our schools. So, you know, I think the last piece that I want to highlight is we did choose to do a staff-wide book read, and we're hoping that we can involve you as our school committee members in that as well. We chose the book How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi, and you know, he is one of the modern thinkers on racism right now. This book is widely acclaimed and it's flying off the bookshelves, particularly right now. And so this is something we want to have all of our staff have a common experience over the summer, but we know that book clubs don't cut it in the work that we have to do. And so what we're also committing to do is as we return to school, some of those first 3 days of professional learning time that we've allocated will be specific to unpacking the issues that the book raises with our staff, but also helping them to plan forward into the types of activities that now have to result in their classroom. So I wanted to provide that brief update, which may not seem so brief right now, but I wanted to provide that overview of the commitments we have. But before, you know, I take any questions or comments, Don, I don't know if there's anything that you want to add to that.
Sorry, I had to find my unmute button. It was down. No, I think you really covered it well, and I think that the memo that we sent out to all of our families expresses really where we are and what we're hopeful for the future.
So I know, thank you, Peter. I know at least Angie reached out to me and has something to say. I just want to note to everybody that we do have a proposed resolution from the MASC so that we can take our own steps as a statement, at least as a school committee. That's further on in the meeting. But if anybody has a question or a statement, Angie, I can let you go first if you'd like.
Oh, I can let people go first.
Well, no one else, I don't think anyone else is raising their hand at the moment. So,
Okay.
So go right ahead.
Okay. So, yeah, thank you, Peter. That I'm so happy to see we are taking the initiative and all this. And I kind of, with so many things going on, this is my topic's probably not 100% on your topic, but I kind of see that the 2020 is halfway. But while we're fighting with an invisible virus, and I think the society is also calling for changes now. I'm looking at all this chaos. With all this chaos, I'm looking at it, but the other perspective is I think this is a great opportunity for education. So what perspective do we want our students to learn from this? what critical thinking process our students are learning or experience from this. So what values do we want our students to build? So beside our core value of equity, inclusiveness, or slash anti-racism, wellness, how do we also continue to build empathy, kindness, gentleness, patience, and love? We also earlier this year we discussed the fixed mindset and growth mindset. I'm just watching the media recently. So how do we help our students and families to build a growth mindset, build communication within the families, and with that may have different perspectives, and so we can focus not what's different, but trying to find a common ground and to build so we can build together. So I'm just the other thing I want to bring up is with all this kind of nonstop event this year, for many students, especially the more vulnerable students, they really need stability in this kind of uncertainties. So I just want to, I know that we're doing it, but I just still want to focus that our students' wellness and safety are still our priorities. Yeah. Thank you.
Angie, thank you. Angie, thank you for centering what will most likely be our work throughout the summer and as we start next year.
Mm-hmm.
Diane? Oh, you're muted. You're muted. You're muted.
Sorry. I just wanted to publicly express my gratitude to Dawn and Peter for the work that they are already engaged in around race for this summer and next year. It just really sends a strong message and sets a steady course forward. And I really appreciate that. I really, really do. What are affinity groups? That was my question.
Oh, do you want to jump in?
Sure. An affinity group is usually a group. So, for instance, we might have an affinity group for staff members of color, for example, staff members who are Black, staff members who are LGBTQ. They're basically support groups for individuals from historically marginalized identities or communities, especially within a district where the majority of our education force and our leadership team is predominantly white.
Evelyn?
Yeah, thank you, Peter, and your leadership team for everything you're doing to create a community where everyone belongs and everybody fits in. And I know it's going to be a heavy lift, but I think we're headed in the right direction as a community, and we're finally doing the right things as a district to ensure that every kid that goes to AB fits in, is received well, is welcomed, and is included. I think one thing, and I may have missed it when you spoke, but I think that we also have to look at our recruitment process and see how we can recruit staff of color. I know, it's not going to be easy for us to get people of color to come in this district and teach. And I know I've heard from, folks that I've spoken to why they don't want to come, because they have the fear that they may not be welcomed and all that. But I think that, as we do in healthcare, when you really want a physician, you go out and you recruit them, you court them. It's a dating, it's a dance. You do it and you bring them in. And so I want to see us do some of that. And I know that we're not going to get up to half of the staff. I'm not asking for half. We need a counselor of color, for instance. We've lost our counselor of color. We should at least make an effort to get a counselor of color in. I think, we've seen in the last few days some of what has happened. We want the kids of color to feel that there's somebody within the district or the school system that they can go to if they need to speak, somebody that can resonate with their feelings and understand them. The other thing that I would like to suggest is that, I know the kids of color have brought up that wherever they congregate, the police is always there and constantly looking at them. And I don't know why, but I think that we want to make them feel like they belong in the school, and they're part of the school. And even if the police is constantly showing up where they're sitting or where they're congregating during breaks, have a conversation with them. Don't let them feel like they've been watched and and that they're probably doing something bad, or you're trying to catch them doing something bad. So I think overall, some of the stuff that you've mentioned is the right things that we're doing as a district, and we can only do one thing at a time. But I'm hopeful that over the next several years, we'll get where we want to get to.
Thank you, Evelyn. I think that's fantastic, and I think we're hoping to come back again next fall and share more about the work that we're trying to do in terms of recruiting educators of color in particular. And it's something, Marie and I started talking from an HR perspective, where we're now collecting data and we're allowing candidates to self-identify as educators of color or, from other marginalized groups where we're actively trying to recruit. And what we're looking at right now is collecting the data about how many candidates of color are applying for each position that we have open, who's getting interviews. I know HR reaches out to principals to make sure that principals are aware of any candidates who do apply, who self-identify, so that they can move forward in the interview process. But then we're also trying to collect data about every step along the interview process, so that if we don't get the number of candidates of color that we want to making it into our finalist interviews and getting positions, we can identify exactly where along the way that's breaking down and then have really targeted solutions. So for example, if we're not getting a lot of candidates of color to apply, then we have a recruitment issue. If we're having a lot of candidates apply, but they're not getting interviews, that's a different issue. But we want to be really targeted in our approach and make sure we understand what's actually happening in the process.
Peter, thank you for that comprehensive update, which was not quick or short, but that's okay. It was important. Item 4.1 on our agenda is a presentation from our Special Education Parent Advisory Council. Amanda Bailey and Carrie Weaver are the CPAC co-chairs. I believe from looking at the attendees that maybe only Amanda is here tonight, but per policy BDFB, our CPAC presents to the school committee in the fall and the spring to share their annual goals and other topics they are working on. The school committee has we had 3 liaisons this year to the group, Diane, Paul, and myself. And it looks like Amanda's here. Hi, Amanda.
All right. And so, Amanda, do you want me to allow you to share your screen so you can control the presentation, or do you want me to present?
I can just let you advance it. That would be great.
And you can just say next slide, and I will pick up on the cue that way. Let me
Thank you.
Pull it up and then share my screen. I do everything in Google, so believe it or not, it's actually a challenge to use PowerPoint at this point. And I did promote Debbie Dixon to panelist in case anyone has questions at the end.
And I have background noise. I apologize in advance. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Amanda Bailey. Carrie Weaver and I are the 2019-2020 co-chairs of the ACTON-BOXBOROUGH Special Education Parent Advisory Council, or the CPAC. I'm here this evening to update the school committee on our organization's goals and priorities from the past school year. Advance, please.
Easier said than done. There we go. All right.
Thank you. For those who may be unfamiliar, the CPAC is a state-mandated, volunteer-run organization to advise the district on matters pertaining to the education and safety of students with disabilities. Per Mass General Law, the CPAC also participates in the planning, development, and evaluation of the district's special education programs. Advance, please. The CPAC works on 2 levels, individually and collectively. In addition to advising and providing resources for families, we use information gleaned from these conversations, our business meetings, forums, and surveys in an advisory capacity to affect district-level change. We are fortunate in ACTON-BOXBOROUGH to have one of the more successful working relationships in the state among the CPAC, the school committee, and the administration to accomplish this. Before addressing our goals, there were many things that took place in our broader community this year to positively impact students with disabilities. Among them, the District Professional Learning Day in the fall emphasized inclusion practices and universal design for learning. The town's approval of the school building project will result in a fully accessible and modern facility for students from the early childhood program, as well as replacing 2 outdated and inaccessible elementary school buildings. District communication boards were installed at the early childhood program Acton site, Conant, and Blanchard to help facilitate interactions on the playground. We celebrate these as well as the unanticipated and Herculean effort it took to move to the remote education of students with greatly varying levels of need. Advance, please. Pivoting to our actions for the year, we continue to improve outreach and engagement, building relationships. We participated in the search process for a new special education director. We pursued district-wide use of percentiles in evaluation reports. And our big achievement for the year was to monitor early reading assessments and interventions and develop guidelines for those. The next slides will explore some of these in a little more detail. With turnover in leadership at the district and building levels, the CPAC has devoted energy to forging connections with new administrators. These efforts go both directions. Interim Special Education Director Debbie Dixon met with us, attended our meetings and events, and the superintendent met with the officers to discuss DEI and literacy initiatives, attended our community forum. We were working with the Blanchard administrators and the Gates PTO to provide presentations on basic rights in special education and the continuum of interventions when the pandemic hit here. We hope those kinds of efforts will pick up again in the coming year. The CPAC was also pleased to recognize a dozen staff members as put forward by parents and guardians for their efforts during the closure. Dance. You may recall we presented in the fall on the CPAC's request the district adopt the use of percentiles in addition to standard and scaled scores in all evaluation reports. Simply using scaled scores and descriptions can mask gaps within student learning profiles that may indicate the need for individualized intervention or support. Interim Special Education Director Debbie Dixon moved very quickly on this, and we celebrate the universal adoption of this practice, which will help facilitate interpretation of reports by families and staff alike. Regarding education and outreach, the CPAC had planned a series of basic rights workshops with surrounding districts, including an IEP for my child and transition age IEPs for students ages 14 and up. The CPAC greatly values this partnership with parent leaders from surrounding towns. Unfortunately, the series was interrupted after the first presentation due to the pandemic. The Federation for Children with Special Needs does have these workshops available as webinars, translated into a number of languages at fcsn.org. The Intelligent Live screening in the fall was attended by families and staff alike, continuing conversations around inclusion. The CPAC also hosted our first family social in years, which was well received. The CPAC's major focus this year was around dyslexia screening and intervention. Through numerous conversations, the CPAC developed a set of recommendations as seen in your packet. These encompass screening, reading support, identification, general education reading instruction, intervention service provision, and post-remediation. Advance, please. Please note these build on the district's ongoing efforts. We bring these recommendations to you and hope that they will inform the school committee's decisions regarding the ABRSD budget for curriculum materials, professional learning, and staff trained in interventions like Wharton Gillingham and Wilson Reading. Literacy is a social justice issue. Thanks to all those who participated in this process, this achievement reflects how CPACs should operate and work with their districts. Advance, please. And then there was a pandemic. The chairs met with Superintendent Light and the interim director early on to address concerns about how remote instruction would be developed and delivered. The CPAC urged the inclusion of special educators on all grade level curriculum teams. Their participation made an immediate impact on the accessibility of materials provided students, such as audio recordings of the text content in Google Slides. As we suspended business meetings from March through May, the CPAC published a parent-guardian feedback form to gather concerns to take to the administration. On April 22nd, we presented to the community on the then most recent developments regarding special education during the closure. Debbie made herself available for a Q&A with parents and guardians. We continue to track weekly, sometimes daily guidance from the state to the special education directors, and that coming from disability advocacy organizations. Yes, please. What about the fall? We're doing a lot of batting down rumors while documenting parents' concerns. Next slide, please. We've listed here 3 ways for parents to provide feedback to the CPAC, the district, and the state by participating in the superintendent surveys. We're going to have a feedback form posted on our site that we'll share with our networking list. And people may also email the state return to school working group at that email address. We've also provided here places to go for up-to-date information. One of the CPAC's goals for the coming year is to monitor state guidance and families' experiences regarding reopening the schools, and that'll include resuming evaluations and compensatory services. So that'll be an ongoing. Our appreciation to outgoing Secretary Melissa Brown for her service. The CPAC welcomes Abraham Gutierrez as a co-chair next year. We currently have open positions on our executive board and will continue to solicit volunteers. Our meeting schedule is pending. Next slide, please. We'd like to take this opportunity to publicly thank outgoing board member Bill Guthlein. Bill served the students of Acton-BOXBOROUGH for over a decade in various capacities within our organization and of his own volition. His passion for data-driven measures of student growth continue to guide our advocacy. Next. We look to rejoin you in the fall to present on the CPAC's objectives for the coming school year. Among these, we recognize we have not done enough to address and remove barriers to participation and leadership for Black, Indigenous, and persons of color who are parents and guardians of children with disabilities. The membership voted on concrete steps to begin to do so at our annual meeting last week. The CPAC further thanks Superintendent Light, Interim Director Dixon, and the school committee for your ongoing collaboration and support. Also, among his other roles on the school committee, Paul Murphy was our liaison for many years. He will be missed, and we're happy to take any questions you may have.
Sorry, let me pull up my thing so I can see if there's hands raised. Thank you, Amanda. That was a great presentation. Very thorough, as always. Paul.
Thank you, Amanda. I wanted to just express my appreciation for Bill Guthlein's contribution. It was a lot of his work, and I mentioned this at the last CPAC meeting, but I'd like to voice it here. A lot of the work that he did was instrumental in helping to create the joint commission that the Massachusetts legislature undertook. So kudos to Bill for that. A question I have for Amanda is that I noticed you're keeping up with the DESE website. So as they are adjusting curriculum plans for the fall, they're also updating the special education piece of that?
There's weekly guidance going to the special education directors, and Debbie can speak much more comprehensively to that. Professionally, I'm also involved with an emergency response group among a number of disability advocacy organizations. So we're really on top of it, but it's changing weekly. I think they're really almost trying to play catch up a bit. Extended school year guidance came out around very late in the process. Kids who were turning 3 from early intervention and those who were turning 22 and heading into adult services were left in a gap for a number of, I'd say, months before we had clear guidance on that. So it's been coming, but it's evolving very rapidly.
Don't see anybody else having any questions, which means that you did a wonderful job of answering all of them, so we didn't even have them to ask. Thank you for the letter regarding the dyslexia recommendations. I think that they were incredibly thorough and much appreciated as we move forward into another school year. So thank you for all of that work and for organizing the discussion among parents. I think that that was highly successful and a great place. I know that many parents were really, really appreciative of the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. It's been wonderful working with you again this year.
Nice work. All right, thank you. So the next, we have several items under new business to vote tonight. So I'm going to remind members that suggested motions are found on the agenda item cover sheets in the packet that Beth so helpfully included this time. So the very first thing we have is a proposed Acton-BOXBOROUGH Regional School Committee resolution regarding COVID-19 state funding. This was put out by the MASC and has already over 40 member districts, I believe, that have signed on to it. I had an email earlier from someone in the Triton Regional School District asking if we would take it up, and I assured her that it was being taken up tonight. We just had a really late meeting compared to everyone else who had already taken it up, but it's been widely accepted. So I don't know. Kat is in here. Hold on. Sorry. Kat wanted to join the meeting. I guess I should read it so that we know what it says, and then we can have a vote. So, whereas if schools are to reopen this fall in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, it is the responsibility of each school district to do so safely and responsibly. And whereas it is the responsibility of the state to ensure that each school district is able to pay for the enormous additional staffing, transportation, and material expenses required to do this. And whereas the state cannot expect mandatory COVID-19 safety guidelines to be followed without also ensuring that each school district has the funds required to implement these guidelines. Therefore, let it be resolved that the state must guarantee every school district full reimbursement for whatever COVID-19 expenses are required to follow state mandates. We must ensure a statewide school reopening that is safe, responsible, and equitable. There can be no unfunded mandates for COVID-19. So, I will entertain a motion. John?
I move that we adopt the resolution as read with the deletion of the word enormous in the second paragraph.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Paul, were you raising your hand to discuss?
I was just gonna make the motion, sorry.
That's okay. Paul, I will let you make the next motion to make sure that you have an opportunity to do that. Okay, we'll do a roll call then if there's no other discussion. Angie? Yeah, you're muted. Yes. Amy?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Adam?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Nora?
Yes.
Maya?
Yes.
Dawn?
Yes.
Evelyn?
Yes.
Okay, great. That is, oh, and myself, yes. That is unanimous. All right, so the second MASC proposed resolution is this, with regards to the response to social, economic, and racial justice in our communities. So whereas schools have the responsibility to equip students with their civil right of obtaining a free and appropriate public education, it is the responsibility of each school to ensure we create a welcoming community for all students. And whereas it is the responsibility that every district provide to all district staff, including school committee members, annual professional development on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And whereas every district will commit to recruiting and retaining a diverse and culturally responsive teaching workforce. And whereas every district will examine their policies for institutional and systemic racialized practices and implement change with sustainable policies that are evidence-based. And whereas every district will incorporate into their curriculum the history of racial oppression and works by Black authors and works from diverse perspectives. And whereas we as school district leaders can no longer remain silent to the issues of racism and hate that continue to plague our public and private institutions. Resolved that Acton-Boxborough Regional School District and all the school districts in the Commonwealth must guarantee that racist practices are eradicated and diversity, equity, and inclusion is embedded in practice for our students, families, faculty, and staff. And I know that Angie at least had one thing that she wanted as a suggestion. So I would just like us all to consider that before we get into the piece of making motions and all of that. Adam?
There's a piece on the next page that is also included in the.
It is?
Yeah.
Sorry. We must ensure our own school culture and that of every district in the Commonwealth is anti-racist, that acknowledges that all lives cannot matter until Black lives matter. Sorry, thank you, Adam, for pointing that out. Angie, what was the suggestion that you wanted to put forth? Sorry.
So, is the whereas every district will incorporate into their curriculum the history of racial oppression and works by Black authority and the works from diverse perspective. So I added a line and continuing, including those that reflect the racial and ethnic diversity of our towns.
Okay. Thanks, Angie. So, Paul, did you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll move to approve as amended by Angie.
Second.
All right. Is there any further discussion? Okay. Angie?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Adam?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Nora?
Yes.
Maya?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Evelyn?
Yes.
And myself, yes. So that also passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you for the additions and deletions, John. Next, we have item 5.2, which is we believe, as the Acton-Boxborough Education Association side letter, we believe that our students will be better served if staff is provided additional time and support to prepare for school to reopen this fall. Approval of this request would move the professional day currently scheduled for November 3rd, which is Election Day, to Friday, August 28th. The voted calendar has teachers returning to work on August 26th, and school begins for students on August 31st. The November Election Day is a no school day for students. A side letter is, for those of us who are new, is a document added to a formal contract already in effect. So, Marie, did you want to speak to that at all? Is there anything else?
You covered it. Thank you, Ted.
You're welcome. Paul, you want to make another motion?
I would love to. So I move to approve. I move that the Acton-Boxborough Regional School Committee approve the ABEA side letter to change the November 3rd, 2020 professional day to August 28th, 2020.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Angie?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Adam?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Maya?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Evelyn?
Yes.
Myself, yes, that also passes unanimously. Nice work, people. All right, we're only 20 minutes behind. That's not so bad. Okay, so item 6.1 is Peter's summative review. So this is the part where I get to keep talking a lot. The FY20 school committee members, everyone completed evaluations except for Evelyn, who was concerned that she had to do one, and I said that she got a pass this year for just joining. And I have compiled them into a single document, the summative review. So I'm going to note that the public was invited to provide feedback, and we did not hear anything. So I'm going to read the summative review, and then we can have discussion. Peter Light has accomplished a lot in his second year, despite the shorter school year due to COVID-19. This is the overwhelming sentiment of the Acton-Boxborough Regional School District School Committee in its 2020 evaluation. More specifically, members noted Peter's ability to skillfully navigate our district through the storms. He's always willing to listen, and he consistently creates channels for better communications and opportunities. His work is rooted in a sincere, deep caring for the students and families of the district. Pairing his concern for the social-emotional needs of students alongside their learning and other individual needs is a resounding priority. Most notable has been Peter's performance since the school closure in March. Nearly every member expressed appreciation for his swift reaction to changing circumstances and his honesty, forthrightness, and empathy in communicating with community members regarding changes. Peter has had to lead us through a global pandemic, economic downturn, and wholesale change in the way education has needed to be delivered to our students. Peter's service to the district has remained steadfast, and he has encouraged the team around him, motivated them, and gained their trust. The work with our teachers' union to put together a robust program of learning during closure was commendable. A focus on the importance of connection allowed our students to maintain synchronous relationships with their teachers. While there was a wide interpretation of the completion of goals that Peter set out to accomplish this year, there was agreement that goals that were not met were largely due to the constraints put on the staff because of closure. Nearly 2/3 of the committee felt that Peter's professional practice goal had been met or exceeded. The community coffees were widely lauded, and Peter's timely and thoughtful newsletters were appreciated. There was concern among some members that the continuation of a district-wide family advisory group had been lost in the closure. With increasing racial tensions nationally, members hope to see this group continue when school reconvenes and to have a greater influence on proposing changes to curriculum and policy. Similarly, there was wide agreement that Peter's district improvement goals had been met or exceeded. The evaluation of our SEL program was completed, and members were satisfied that the district was now prepared to take appropriate steps to meet the suggestions provided. A fair amount of work was completed with regards to the goals surrounding educator evaluation as well. A suggestion for continued work was in ensuring that student learning and teacher impact are at the center of the evaluation process. Without consistent measures of assessment of students, it seems unclear how accountability for student learning can be consistent across buildings. The student learning goal seems to have suffered the most under closure. 4 members felt that this goal had been met or exceeded. They noted the significant work that had been done around including dyslexia questions in the kindergarten screener, as well as partnering with dyslexia experts to provide professional learning for some of our teachers. Others felt that while these were important initial steps, they failed to address the entire scope of literacy challenges faced by our district. These members noted the lack of a comprehensive evaluation of existing curriculum and teacher knowledge regarding the science of reading. These members felt that important first steps have been taken, but there is still a significant amount of work to do that will require strong leadership. In the area of instructional leadership, Peter received mostly proficient marks. Members acknowledged the work that had been done to date on identifying specific learning disabilities like dyslexia, as well as adopting and implementing illustrative mathematics K-8 at all 6 elementary schools as well as the junior high. Peter's performance during closure was also highlighted in this area. One member noted, "The superintendent's response to the COVID crisis has been exceptional, with attention to the complex and varied needs of the students and the school community during this turbulent time. I particularly appreciated the superintendent's ready creation of curriculum teams for each grade level, the ability of the district to quickly create plans for synchronous and asynchronous distance learning, and the much-needed flexibility offered to students and families. Instructional leadership is the area in which Mr. Light received the most areas for improvement. It was noted that there is a continued lack of consistency between elementary buildings. The lack of consistent accountability measures for student progress was noted as well. One member wanted to see more focus on different grading practices across buildings, while others noted that there aren't common assessments to measure student progress except MCAS. Some members noted that despite the work that has occurred to better inform literacy practices at the K-2 level, there is still a lot of work to be done if these changes will be impactful. It was noted that while the introduction of structured literacy practices in the early grades was welcomed, it is at odds with the wider literacy curriculum that is still in place across the district. Peter received several exemplary ratings on the standard of management and operations. Members noted his ability to respond in a calm and collected fashion, even in times of crisis. His handling of long-term projects, such as setting the budget, focusing on capital improvements, and building projects, is commendable. His decisions alongside facilities management are prudent and seek insight from expert staff, students, and families when necessary. Mr. Light has found a fiscally creative and responsible way to continue to fund projects even in the face of tightening budgets. The work with District Management Group to evaluate our continuum of services for SEL was also lauded. Utilizing the range of programming available to our district through Assabet Valley Collaborative has provided much-needed wraparound services for vulnerable families in our district. It was noted that pursuing a stronger relationship with Advocate Psychiatric Emergency Services or similar would provide a level of support to students in crisis without the need to call in police support. Peter's dedication to passing the school building project in both towns cannot be understated. His enthusiasm for the project was contagious, and it was noted repeatedly that we owe the successful passing of both town meetings due in large part to the enormous effort he dedicated to the project. It was noted that an area for improvement is continued work in hiring and recruiting a more diverse staff. While there has been a concerted effort and mild success in this area, one member noted that we should increase the transparency around these efforts. In light of national events, there has been an increasingly louder call for hiring educators of color. It would be helpful if the community knew more about the efforts that are already in process. Peter received several exemplary ratings on family and community engagement again this year. Peter was extraordinarily visible to the community through coffees and webinars post-closure, an emergency forum dedicated to discussing race in our community, and also through his regular communications through email. Of particular note was Peter's letter to the community regarding distance learning. He allowed himself to be vulnerable and shared his own challenges as a parent during a difficult time for all. We've received many emails as a committee thanking Peter for his quick response to any number of issues. This area has been particularly highlighted by his performance during closure. Every school committee meeting has had an update on closure, and it has been clear that feedback was taken seriously as the quality of the learning boards and distance learning expectations were raised each week. AB's commitment to providing accommodations in its learning plans for struggling learners was also applauded. Although some frustration was expressed with regards to the lack of new material and to inconsistent service delivery for students on IEPs, Peter's commitment to the well-being of our students was front and center in the decisions that were made. An area that was noted for improvement was the continuing work on equity. While Peter himself has made great efforts to understand the experience of families in our district, it is not clear that other members of the central admin team have been as successful in their efforts. Peter was very visible at events such as the CPAC-sponsored Conversation About Dyslexia and the Community Forum on Race, while other members of the central administration team were less visible. This is of note because of the renewed effort to institute an aligned system of support across the elementary schools and the widespread acknowledgement that our schools are not always welcoming places for underrepresented groups. At the Race Forum, many community members spoke passionately about their experience of racism, both in school and in town, and there was a clear call for reform. Likewise, many families spoke passionately about the failed system of identification of learning disabilities, and it was important for other administrative leaders to hear this testimony as we also pursue a district-wide literacy vision. While Peter approaches hard conversations with understanding and empathy and is clear in his desire for systemic change, it will be important for these to be shared values across the administrative team. Peter received mostly proficient and exemplary scores in the area of professional culture. One member summed it up best by saying, "Mr. Light is an exemplary leader who has gained wide respect in this community. He is supportive of his staff while challenging them to seek sober improvement. He has infused the staff with a culture of growth. He propels staff to be more reflective around their current practices and is calling for alignment in many areas. He is extremely committed to high standards yet has not taken on too much in his efforts so that he can stay focused on attainable goals. The tone he sets for his leadership team and staff translates to collaboration and great productivity. He has set about realizing clearer standards and better results in sound teaching, learning, and student well-being." Another member noted that Peter continues to consistently demonstrate exemplary communication skills and has made a strong commitment to maintaining a culture of reflective practice and continuous learning, and is sensitive to and transparent regarding the disparate and culturally entrenched views in our communities that challenge our ability to commit to a shared educational vision. Members unanimously felt that Peter sets a positive tone for professional culture in our district, and they look forward to the continued work in this area. Peter is extremely committed, intelligent, and hardworking, and members were unanimous in their enthusiasm to continue this work together. For these reasons, the Acton-Boxborough Regional School Committee hereby gives the rating of proficient to Peter Light, Superintendent of the Acton-Boxborough Regional School District, on the indicators of instructional leadership, management and operations, family and community engagement, and professional culture. So if I don't have to talk for the rest of the meeting, that's okay. So thank you, Peter. That was most members were unanimous in their praise of you, and it's clear that you are an excellent leader and that everyone enjoys working with you and is comfortable and encouraging of the direction in which you're taking us. So thank you. So if anyone else wants to ask a question or comment, Paul?
Well, I'm ready to make a motion, unless you want to.
Adam's ready for you to make a motion too, and I don't see any other hands. So I think that Diane, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, can I just say it's been a hell of a year and a true test of a leader to bring us through the way that you have, and I just cannot imagine what it has been like for you. But from this side, we are so grateful that you accepted our invitation to come here and have led us in the manner that you have.
John?
So I wanted to comment on two things. One which I think is touched in the summary review, but which is just critically important, is Peter's willingness to be personally vulnerable. A lot of the discussion that I hear going on in various topics relates to the problem of people not being able to examine themselves, be candid about things, accept where there are problems and have honest discussions around those. And no problem can be solved if it can't be discussed. And Peter is willing, to be very straight up about that. And I think, he got a lot of positive feedback from his letter about, geez, here's how I'm feeling as a dad. And he was very candid with us as a committee about the fact that his son maybe didn't spend all of his free time studying math. So, and that's important. People need to see that our administration is just as human as everybody else, sitting at this table. And then the one thing, that, I did reflect on as I was thinking about the review is the ongoing challenge in education of trying to understand what have we really taught students anyway. It is a deep, deep problem. There are some points in the review that touch on this. But, I would encourage, Peter and, everyone in the administration never to walk away from that question. It's easy to say, we started illustrative math, so we trained everybody. But in the end, what we really care about is how did that impact students? And until we can get to the point where we do something and we know how we've helped students, it's always going to feel a little bit short. And so I fully understand why that's, if Peter is superintendent for the next 20 years, we'll come to the end of 20 years, and there will still be limitations about our ability to answer that question, but we need to try.
Thanks, John. Okay. Paul, would you like to make your motion? Angie, sir. Wait. Sorry, Angie raised her hand right at the end. Angie, what?
Yeah, I also just want to thank Peter for taking all of us and together kind of sailing through this year. It's a really, and I see that you are not afraid of any challenges and disagreement, and you just head on and work with all this different party and communicate with all the community staff and school committee and be able to make decision. I really thank you for that.
Okay. Paul, it's your turn.
Yeah, and I just want to echo what John and Angie and others have said. I'm very pleased with the leadership in this district. So I'll move that the ACTON-BOXBOROUGH Regional School Committee accept the annual summative review for Superintendent Peter Light dated June 17th, 18th, 2020, presented as presented.
Second.
Okay. It doesn't look like there's any other discussion, so we will vote. Angie?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Adam?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Maya?
Yes.
John?
Yes, with gratitude for all Tessa's hard work.
Yes.
Thank you, John. Evelyn?
Yes, and thank you, Peter, for your leadership.
And myself. Yes. So that passes unanimously. So the second part of this is that we need to set Peter's salary for the FY21 and to record the FY21 salary.
So Peter wants to say something
Yeah,
again.
go ahead, Peter, sorry.
Peter wants to say something.
I see him. Sorry.
I'm gonna hold
It's
the sign
such a
next
long
time.
agenda, and there's so many things. Sorry.
I know. No, I just want to say, I think the one thing that, and I think I said this last year, and I think I say it often, often the superintendent is the person talking or up front, but it's really the team that ends up doing all of the work. I'm always, it always takes me aback a bit, and, in all honesty, it's embarrassing to hear all the things that, get accolades and things like that in an evaluation or otherwise, because the bottom line is, as a superintendent, and maybe this comes from being a building principal person, but I feel like I don't do anything other than just me. But it's really everyone else on the team, from central office staff to all of our principals and assistant principals, curriculum leaders, coaches, and educators that really do all of the work behind moving the district forward. And I can't thank the team enough. This is, and I'll get emotional here because I think the last 3 months in particular have probably been, if not the most challenging, certainly among the most challenging 3 months in any one of our leaders' lives, professional lives. The amount of change, the volume of work, the ever-shifting landscape has required so much time and effort from every one of our leaders, and that coupled with everything else that's going on in the world is just it's been astounding to have such an incredible team doing all of that. And I just want to make sure I recognize them for all of the work and just say thank you publicly for everything. It's a wonderful group. They're fantastic. None of this would be done without all of the hard work that's gone into this.
Sorry, Peter. I didn't mean to not acknowledge that you wanted to respond.
So I'll do that. And then, the other thing I'll say is, I want to just thank the committee for all of the feedback, whether it's the aggregate or individual feedback that you provided. This is great. I think it really allows me an opportunity to think about where we want to continue to grow as a district, and skills that I want to continue to grow with myself to be able to make sure that happens. I know that the form is awfully cumbersome. having evaluated staff for 15 years, I can definitely tell you the testing form is, probably the best descriptor is called convoluted, but it's designed to provide a standard across all superintendents, and so to be able to navigate that is this as your full-time job. I really appreciate all the time you put in, as well as the feedback. So thank you.
And thank you all to putting in the work to get your evaluations to me on time and everything else. It was a lot of going through to read all the commentary and to kind of put everybody's thoughts into some sort of coherent piece to really get at the things that are great in our district and also the things where we want to head in that direction to improve. So the second part of what we need to do is to agree on Peter's salary for next year. I want to note that as part of the budget process that Peter did request that we not give him an increase this year. And so that is what number in our budget reflects. So I don't know if anyone wants to speak to that. There's not a lot of guidance on either my agenda or my packet as to what I'm supposed to say at this point. So, his contract requires that we agree on a salary and that we do that in public session. And so I throw that out there just as information as to what's been put out there, at least by Peter thus far. So if we decide not to increase his salary, it certainly is no reflection on obviously the incredible job that he's done, because his review is stellar. And so if we make that decision, it would not be reflective of his performance. Amy?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the fact that we just settled 3 contracts at 1.5%, I think that it makes perfect sense to do the same with Peter. I think that's the minimum that we should do.
John?
So we did, as part of looking at the budget process, have a discussion about compensation and looked at various things. And, in my understanding is that, in consultation with Peter, one of the decisions that was made as a group is that we would not increase the superintendent's salary. Not at all, as you have said, as a reflection of performance, but precisely as a reflection of leadership. We don't have a particularly bloated salary structure. We don't have, a whole group of executives that we can say, oh, you can all take a 25% haircut and you can do that. But I think there is, important symbolism associated with saying, we think that we're in, reasonable shape for FY21. We're really very unclear about what FY22 looks like. And I think, the discussion with Peter about different things that we could do, both for in terms of absolute dollars, you can't make much of an argument that this is critical. But in terms of just telling everybody in our community that we realize that there are challenges ahead and our superintendent will be leading that charge, I think that's what the recommendation not to increase salary is about.
Paul, did you have something to add?
No, actually, I was just torn with that. I mean, I think it's a generous offer for Peter to make, and I think that's kind of sets a tone that others pay attention to. On the other hand, I'm with Amy about everyone else was given a 1.5. So I'm kind of torn between the two.
Not particularly helpful, Paul. You've tied it up. So would anyone else like to, throw their hat in the ring and give feedback on what they think we should do? All right, Maya.
I think that we should accept Peter's offer with gratitude, understanding that it does not reflect, it's not a reflection on his performance. It's really a reflection of the times, the instability that is now weaved into the fabric of our lives in multiple ways. And looking at an insecure future, I think that this is a generous and thoughtful offer on Peter's behalf, and we should humbly accept it, knowing we, of course, would not want to repeat it next year, and really use it as just a mini statement for his commitment to the betterment of this district in uncertain times. So thank you for everything, Peter.
Evelyn?
So I sort of want to echo Paul's sentiments. I feel torn as well because I think that Peter has done a wonderful job in the district. And I do recognize that we're in difficult times and we should probably accept the gesture, but I wonder if there's opportunity when all this is over and the next time that we're evaluating him and approving a salary, could we recognize that there was a time that he gave up his raise and do something about it? I don't know. I mean, being the newest member on the team, I don't know how the mechanics of that work. But I think that, getting a raise is a recognition of the work that you've done. And it would be nice to be able to give him that recognition. But I understand what the others are saying as well.
I think the brief answer to that is that his salary is always determined as part, well, not always determined, in part as a reflection of his summative evaluation for the year and with knowing what what our general financial situation is. I think that this year ended up being kind of a funny year because of the order of the way things happened, and so duly noted, Evelyn, I guess. Diane?
I'm for giving him 1.5%, the 1.5%, and the reason is really just it's part. I'm all for symbolism, and I appreciate the gesture. I looking ahead, I think FY22 is going to probably be the harder year financially than FY21. So just from a pragmatic perspective, if we were faced with a situation, I'll just say for FY22, I would hate for us to be in the position where 2 years in a row we would have to consider not giving him a raise. He deserves a raise. His performance merits one. I think we to kind of be cautious about the amount is a smart thing to do. We don't know what's going to happen budgetarily with the revenue and the costs of opening next year depend on state guidelines. I'm just trying to be a pragmatist here. So I'm going to throw my hat in the ring with Amy and suggest that we do give him a raise this year.
Adam?
Yeah, I'm in the Paul camp. I'm really struggling with this right now, and I think it's really important for us to recognize that if there's no raise given, it's of course no reflection of the amazing work that Peter's done this year and this dedication to the district. And it's really hard to sort of put a number on that. And I struggle because I'm looking at 1.5%. It's about $3,000, and $3,000 isn't trivial when we're talking about having to, duplicate supplies because kids can't share pencils anymore. And so I struggle with the fact that that's $3,000 that could go somewhere else. And I also struggle with the fact of just putting a number on it. So what's half of that? If it's 1/4% or 3/4%, that's about $1,000 increase. Like, at what point does it become just sort of not making, so trivial it doesn't make sense to put that on there? So at this point, I'm really leaning towards keeping the salary where it is, but in the motion, really recognizing that it has no reflection on Peter's dedication to the district.
John?
I just wanted to provide the history that when we went through the 2009 recession, we did actually have no raise for the superintendent, as well as, and Marie can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the administrators. The timing of that was different in terms of the way it played out in the budget, but that's what we did. And of course, what then happens over time is when we come back in an environment where we can look at equity, we'll look at the internal equity and see that there are issues, and we will in the future have an opportunity to address those. So I think to the point that was made by Evelyn, we will be able, in the future to revisit this question. And to be perfectly honest, because the superintendent's contract is a special case. Suppose, everything, turns out completely different than we expect, and next year is flush. There is no bar for the school committee coming back, in the spring next year and saying, guess what? We can fix this right now. That's something that could be done if the financial circumstance, has been completely misread on our part.
Paul? You're muted.
Sorry. I'm taking Adam's point about kind of opportunity lost if we don't take advantage of the offer. That's money to the district that could be used towards some things that could be fairly important. It's only because Peter offered that I think I'm willing to take the offer, and then if the committee at the time later feels like we are in a position to give him better recognition, maybe we can take advantage of that later.
John? Oh, you didn't have it up. Well, I was also wondering, John, since you're the wordsmith and so particular about the things, if you actually wanted to make the motion, because it might be easier. And no one else is raising their hand. So I think that people that wanted to discuss have discussed, but.
Okay, so I'll make a motion, and then we can.
And then we discuss again.
Then we can see what happens. Okay. So I move that we make no change to the superintendent's salary for FY21 as a reflection of the challenging financial times and the gracious offer of the superintendent to accept no raise for this next year.
Second.
All right. Is there discussion, Adam?
I would like to make a friendly amendment that includes that the recognition that this has no reflection on Peter's or his strong dedication to the district.
I accept your friendly amendment.
Second.
Okay. Good job, Paul. Okay, so we will vote. Angie? You're muted. Can you unmute yourself?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Adam?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Nora?
Yes.
Maya?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Evelyn?
Yes.
And myself, yes. So that passed unanimously with gratitude to Peter and his service this past year. Thank you so much, and all of us unanimously are looking forward to continuing the work with you. So I appreciate everything that you've done and everything that you've put forward, and including all of your updates tonight. You're doing a great job, so keep it up. So the next item on our agenda is approval of meeting minutes from June 4th, 2020.
I move to approve the meeting minutes of June 4th, 2020.
Second.
Okay, it looks like there is no hands raised, so we will do another roll call. Angie?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Adam?
Yes.
Diane? Nora?
Yes.
Maya?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Evelyn?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Okay, those passed unanimously, which brings us to Dave and his budget update.
Thank you. First off, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Last meeting in June, last meeting of the fiscal year. So just a brief update about where we stand globally with our finances. FY20 general fund, I've given you a projection for that. I still expect us to be about $500,000 net turnback, as was previously projected. We have several remaining issues. May and June utilities invoices are yet to be received. We need to finalize contractual payments to employees for things such as contractual vacation pay. And the biggest one that's still out there is settling the issue of payments to private schools for special ed tuitions for day and residential placements. We'll probably have some favorable variances there. Debbie Dixon and I are working to get that resolved. I want to just briefly update about revolving funds and offer a quick update on major funds that we're tracking and that were previously reported to you. School lunch, we previously projected a loss of $486,000, which was primarily the result of revenue loss during the school shutdown, about $600,000 or so of revenue loss. The current projection is improved to a loss of 409, so from 486 to 409. Some reasons for that: there was a waiver granted that allows reimbursement for all free meals that were distributed during the shutdown period. Kirsten Nelson applied for and received a small grant that helped, and she took a retail type approach to her operation and sold off inventory, and then continued that due to demand, and sold some food, frozen foods like meat, fish, pizzas, fresh vegetables, and the like. And so she was able to reduce the projected deficit. One other issue of note: Kirsten's industry crafted a letter which she sent off to legislators. It was received by Congresswoman Trahan's office, and it advocated for a waiver to allow all meals this fall to be given free to students. I'm hoping that will be acted upon favorably in perhaps the next iteration of the CARES Act. Second, community ed, which consists of the regular community ed programs, facilities usage, driver ed, and extended day. There isn't much change from the previously projected combined loss, which was $479,000. We're now looking at $471,000, reflecting about over $1 million of revenue loss for the year. They've had some success with offering driver ed. There was actually more demand than usual due to the circumstances. And Erin is planning to conduct a limited summer program. It won't have a great financial impact, but it's hopefully getting her toe back in the water to begin offering programs again. All-day kindergarten, we initially projected a loss of $441,000, again due to the loss of revenue due to the shutdown. The current projection is a loss of less than $300,000. As we reported, we charged the tuition cost of special ed students to the operating budget and put some of those funds back and restored some of the fund balance for all-day kindergarten. Lastly, other programs like pre-K, ODP, and athletics, all of these programs are projected about the same as the last report. All of them slightly improving because we had some small variances between what we had encumbered and the actual costs. So now I'm going to talk about the grants. There are 3 federal sources that we've been discussing. FEMA reimbursement for COVID-related health and safety measures. We prepared a grant application with the help from the district's designated MEMA, that's Massachusetts FEMA rep. We filed today for reimbursement of $103,000, consisting of contracted services and materials to support building cleaning, signage, equipment, etc., that we bought as a result of the shutdown. FEMA will make a determination of eligibility of those costs and reimburse 75% of what it deems eligible. I don't expect the funds to be coming into the district in the near future, so we'll likely book a receivable as of June 30th that'll appear in our financial statements and won't impact E&D. So that was our FY20 FEMA project submittal. For FY21, we expect to be applying again with a much larger request focused on PPE type expenditures and the like for returning to school. The ESSER grant was $114,000 allocated to Acton-Boxborough through DESE. We're in the process of preparing the required application to receive this in FY21. The district, as you may know, has reduced its budget request by this amount, so that the financial impact of the grant is already captured in our presentations. We're intending to charge technology hardware that had already been included in the budget. So, for example, grade 9 Chromebooks to the ESSER grant. The other sources do not allow you to supplant budgeted money, and in addition, you're required to use ESSER funds before you tap other sources. For example, which is next, the CARES Act. And the CARES Act allocated to cities and towns, not districts. And I've been saying this for a while, but there was $2.7 billion with a B allocated to Massachusetts based on national population, $2,093,000 allocated to Acton, $563,000 allocated to Boxborough so far. The towns that provide fundings to regions do so by designating districts as sub-grantees, so there's a grant process for reporting purposes. We're working on a cost estimate to review with town officials from Acton and Boxborough, and they are aware of the fact that these funds were allocated to cities and towns only, and any eligible costs of schools, whether municipal or regional, would be provided for in that funding. My understanding is that funds that the state allocated so far represented 25% of the total they received from the federal government under the CARES Act. Another 20%, making 45% in total, is supposed to be made available to cities and towns at a future time. That would be, doing the math, an additional $1.7 million to Acton and $450,000 additional to Boxborough. That's a quick wrap up of FY20 and grants as they exist now and looking forward. For FY21, town meetings are scheduled in June, so I don't expect there to be the need for the 1/12 budget administration that we have talked about. There's been no word on FY21 state budgets. It's not expected until July. I know I've been saying that for a while. And FEMA and CARES Act funds should help. There is hope that in the future they might be able to be used to replace lost revenue, which would be very helpful for us if we're able to attach ourselves to some such funding to replenish lost fund balances in programs such as school lunch and community ed. So you likely will be as up on this as I am. The information doesn't come out and all of a sudden there it is, but we'll be continuing to monitor.
Thanks, Dave. Does anyone have any questions for Dave? No. All right. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Subcommittee and member reports are next. Peter, is there a school building committee update?
Yeah, so the project continues to move ahead. We had a meeting last night at Board of Health, and we had the first piece of our septic system approved for installation, and that part is for the building project to be able to install the in-ground holding tanks for the septic. That is a very early part of the first bid package that goes out, so that was an important approval. That did not mean the entire septic system is approved, and that's something we're watching very closely because that's been a point of discussion between the architect and the Board of Health. So we're going to continue to monitor that situation, but the initial approval that we needed was made on the time frame that we needed. We also have drillers on site at Gates for the geothermal wells. They're doing 2 test wells initially. The first well, as of yesterday, was at about 470 feet, and I think they were trying to get to 600. and then they would cap that, and then there's a waiting period until they can test for temperature and things like that. Then they're on to the next well. That process has gotten a little bit bogged down and delayed, which we're a little bit concerned about at this point, but we're hoping that it gets resolved quickly. The driller took a little bit of time to mobilize. I think there's some COVID issues slowing things down in the construction industry. And then, unfortunately, when the drill got on site, it broke. So they had to wait and have the actual drill repaired. So we're monitoring that. We also know there's a lot of in-ground water, which we knew about, but there are even higher levels than originally anticipated. So that's being monitored carefully. But it does continue to progress. We're still on schedule. The early bid packages are out. We anticipate those will be back in late July for approval by the building committee, and we will continue to see more activity. On a positive note, one thing we did start discussing was the idea of a groundbreaking. Those of you that have worked on previous building projects know it's a great community event to be able to get people excited about the project. So, I think in the current environment with COVID, now is not the time to plan a groundbreaking ceremony because I just don't know how excited a virtual groundbreaking would be. But I think what we'll likely do is look at something in the fall where we can actually, pull at least some type of a group socially distant to stand out in the wetlands or something. We'll get everyone, hip waders, and go do a, socially distant groundbreaking.
Great. Adam?
Yeah, I think one thing to note that we should at least bring to the awareness of the committee is that at some point we're going to have to discuss naming the building and the process with which we're going to go through soliciting that information and proposals and whatnot. This came up a couple meetings ago in our building committee meeting, mostly around what do we put on the sign, which we then found out we could basically put anything we needed on the sign for now and make a new sign when we name the building. But it does remind us that we've got to start thinking about the name for the new building.
Fair enough. Good to have on the radar, I guess. Okay. Budget. Diane?
Nothing really to report that you haven't already heard this evening. We mostly discussed the budget impact of COVID, so to be continued once we hear from the state.
Okay. Amy, policy?
Yeah, so policy has not met, but after talking with a couple of people, I think it was Beth or Jenny brought this up. So the procedures are again in your packet because state law says that the superintendent is the person who oversees the nomination and voting for the chair, and then the new chairperson follows the same process that we implemented earlier to elect the vice chair of both towns. So that's a change because originally we thought that the chairperson would run that portion of the meeting, and that's not allowed. So do you want us to revote this, Tessa?
I don't really think it's necessary to. John, do you have thoughts? You kind of winced. So if you feel differently, John, then we can revote it. I think the reason I say no is because it's just a procedure and we didn't have to vote a procedure in the first place. But if just adding that, I mean, that will be added to it, obviously. So
I think that we can change the procedure on the fly for exactly the reason that you said. Procedure is not voted. It's simply something established for the convenience of the committee.
Great. Okay. Thanks for the update, Amy. And I'll just note that our organizational meeting is the July 1st meeting. There was some confusion around the communication around that, and the plan is currently to have that meeting in person on July 1st, or a combination of in person and Zoom, so that members can not attend in person if they feel more comfortable doing it virtually. But if you haven't responded to me and Beth regarding that, yep, Amy.
Do we have to have a quorum, an in-person quorum, or can we does it not matter how many people? We can have 3 people
together and the rest Zoom?
Great question. I don't know the answer to that.
I would have to get some guidance on that. I'm not sure offhand.
Marie?
So the remote participation policy does say you have to have a quorum in the room, but I don't know if any of the new guidance around remote due to COVID would change that, so we could look into it.
Okay, well, I was still waiting to get responses from everybody. I hadn't heard from everybody yet, so to be determined. But that will be a public meeting that the community can attend via Zoom. They won't be attending in person. It would be just committee members, but to be continued. John, did you have an HIT update? You're muted.
Yeah, I do. The Acton Health Insurance Trust met this morning. Expenses through 11 months were $16 million against income of $15 million for a loss of $1 million, not including expected reinsurance recoveries of $0.2 million. May showed a favorable variance of $200,000 related to a continuing reduction in services for members, including elective procedures. This favorability is expected to continue in June, with the revised expectation that the trust will lose between $0.6 million and $0.8 million in FY20. The trustees voted to accept Blue Cross Blue Shield reinsurance, that's the stop loss proposal, with a limit of $125,000. The trustees discussed a draft investment policy with the intent of adopting a policy in the fall. In the annual election, current officers were re-elected. John Peterson will continue as chair, Steve Barrett as secretary.
Thank you, John. Angie, did you have a question or an update?
No. Oh, sorry.
Raised.
I have a question at the FYI section.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Let's do. If there's no other updates, let's do the warrants. I have to turn to them.
Recommendation to accept donations.
Second.
Sorry. Yep. Of the Conant PTO of Lobby Furniture. Thanks, Adam. Second. All right. All those that. That's Angie. Okay.
Because
Sorry.
I was expecting the other statesman of accepting.
6.6 is a recommendation to accept the donation from the Conant PTO of Lobby Furniture.
Paul has to do this because it's his last time he can say with gratitude.
I agree with you. Yes, absolutely. Paul,
With gratitude.
You're calling. No, make the whole motion, Paul.
Move to approve the donation from Conant with gratitude.
Second, with gratitude.
Angie.
Yes. With gratitude.
Amy.
Yes.
You have to say with gratitude.
With gratitude.
Paul.
Yes, with gratitude.
Adam.
Yes, with gratitude.
Diane.
Yes, with gratitude.
Nora. No.
Gratitude.
Maya.
Yes, with gratitude.
John.
Yes, with gratitude and with deep gratitude for Paul's service.
Evelyn. Evelyn. Nope.
Yes, with gratitude. Yes, with gratitude.
Great. And me, yes, with gratitude. So thank you, Paul, for
All right.
leading us all down the path. I promise that we will always accept gifts with gratitude. Excellent. Okay. In your packets is the statement of warrants. Usually at meetings are provided in a hard copy format, but I will read them and then I will make a motion to accept them. So payroll warrant payroll warrant P2025 dated 6/2/20 in the amount of $2,616,114.86. Vendor warrant number 20-025PR dated 6/4/2020 in the amount of $521,533.62. Vendor warrant number 20-025 dated 6/11/2020 in the amount of $429,760.20. And student activity fund reimbursements warrant number 20-025SH for senior high in the amount of $20,579.23.
Second.
All right, Angie.
Yes.
Amy.
Yes.
Paul.
Yes.
Adam,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
Nora,
Yes.
Maya,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Evelyn,
Yes.
and myself, yes, those pass unanimously. Angie, you had a question about the FYI?
Yes, I have a question about one of the or two of them, which is one. The first one is the Peter mentioned about a little bit, which is the expanding the educators of color.
Yeah. Can I just give a quick overview of some of those?
Sure.
And then I'm happy to take any questions on them. So there's a number of items in your FYI packet. And some of these are just simply because there wasn't enough time during our closure to do some updates in person. Obviously, there's the town meeting information, but we also were not able to schedule all of our schools to present to school committee regarding school improvement plan updates. You recall we had a couple of them right before closure, but then when we closed, we had to postpone those. We did ask the principals to put together a few paragraphs each, just to wrap up the school year so that you had a sense and the community had a sense of what was done in our schools. There's also an MSBA letter regarding Blanchard Accelerated Repair Program. We did not get accepted again. Not particularly surprised about that. I would hope maybe we have one more shot at that before we'll have to make some local decisions, but I wanted to bring your attention to that. Actually, let me back up to the school improvement plan updates. One thing, normally we're bringing school improvement plans forward, and if you recall, the process for school improvement plan approval is that principals have to submit school improvement plans to the superintendent of schools, and then I make copies for your comment, and then we incorporate those as appropriate through school improvement plans, and then they come back to me for approval. We are going to approach, it's not a change in policy, but we're approaching these a little bit differently this year, knowing that there is a tremendous amount of work that will be done next year simply to recover from COVID and bring our students back in. We're taking a little bit different approach to the school improvement plans. We're actually writing one district-wide improvement plan that will be done throughout all of the schools and all the levels. With schools having an opportunity to maybe add one goal to it that they see as specific. But what I foresee happening is goals. You'll see some kind of a goal, and the wording might shift a little bit, but you'll see some type of a goal around the social emotional recovery for students, some type of a goal around kind of the academic and core instructional recovery, some type of a goal around the physical recovery, making sure these are safe environments, and then some type of a goal around becoming an anti-racist district. And then if schools want to add something to that, they're welcome to. But we feel where really the approach to returning is so consistent among all of our buildings, and this is really going to be the work of at least the next 6 months, if not the next year. It made a lot of sense just to combine these into one district-wide effort and have a level of consistency across how we're approaching the work next year. So just wanted to give you a heads up that that's a different process than we usually follow, but that was intentional with that kind of reasoning. And if I just can quickly finish up, there's some other one that I wanted to draw your attention to was there was an informational packet in there, hiring educators of colors. That was actually a school committee presentation from November 2019, which, believe it or not, was actually this school year. And that was the update of what we had done over the previous year in terms of hiring for this year. So we just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention and the community's attention because it was something that was of interest right now. And then the final one, Deb and her team were kind enough to put together kind of a final update on STEAM activities over the course of the year so that you had a sense of what was going on with that. And then the last one was just making sure that you were aware of what was happening on Charter Road because we have started construction there, and we wanted to make sure that you and the community had the most recent information about the activity. So sorry for the long-winded explanation. I think we're just trying to wrap up a school year and get you some kind of information in the format that I just
All right, I would, we just don't usually actually mention anything in the FYI. So even
well, it's
in my
all
agenda,
of these. In all honesty, these could have all been presentations, but we would have probably had to take an intermission and then buckle up for another 3-hour session.
No, much appreciated for just the FYI, and it's certainly a significant change in the way our principals are going to approach their school improvement plans. So thank you for that update. Diane?
I just wanted to ask about the school improvement plans, if the process of engaging the school councils is still intact.
You know, the principals may do that for the one goal that they want to set outside of the district-wide plan, but in all honesty, where the focus is COVID, this is really the intent this year. You know, that we've talked about that with our faculty too, that we typically form very large committees with broad representation, engage stakeholders quite a bit along the way. And, you know, I think the normal decision-making processes are still intact across the district, but temporarily we're in crisis decision-making, which has to look a little bit.
John?
Yeah, with respect to the town meeting FYI element, so I attended the Acton pre-town meeting. One element of that is that the slides will be posted online. The slides that I prepared for Acton town meeting are identical, and actually they were all prepared by Adam. But I added just one more slide that has the history, so they're not quite the same as Boxborough. And so what I was wondering about is, do we want to post those anywhere on the website? And then my second question related to that is, if there's going to be a presentation up on the website in advance of town meeting, do we want to add a slide which at the end says questions and put the shell or something else there so that there is an explicit, you know, if you're looking for more, we're prepared to ante up.
My only immediate concern in sharing it in that way is that I would want to make sure that whatever we share as a school committee, reflects the numbers for both Acton and Boxborough. And I know we made, I can't remember, but I feel like there was separate slides for each town in that way. So I just want to make sure whatever we decide to share is an amalgamation of both towns, just so that it looks, you know, is clear that everyone is represented. Diane or Angie, did you have comments on that? I see you both have your hands up. I just don't want to miss you.
No, I didn't have my hand up for this, except that so does that make sense to do that though? Because you really want to have the discrete presentations for the members of town meeting who come to Acton versus Boxborough. So maybe, I don't know, John, what do you think?
Well, they're really not discrete. I mean, because what we have is the total, and then we have an Acton line and we have a Boxborough line. So if you're at Boxborough town meeting, you skip over the Acton line and you talk about Boxborough. If you're in Acton, you know, you just say the Acton line. So the slides, they're identical, and I think it's another reflection of the fact that we are really functioning, you know, much better as a coherent unit. I mean, that we don't need to have different things. It's the same thing.
So the historical slide, would just go in there, even though it won't be going to Boxborough?
I see no harm in it. I mean, I think
that
would look at it.
That would be fine. I think that, you know, that was an additional thing because they were doing a recorded presentation, and it makes sense to add that. I mean, this was one of those years where the message to both towns is remarkably similar, with you know, with the exception just being the actual numbers. So, you know, I think that's okay. I just want to make sure that the numbers for both towns are reflected in whatever we share. Okay, Angie, did you have another question about something else?
Yeah. So back to the slide of the educators of colors. So Peter, this is a question. So the question I sent an email too. So the question is does that mean that we're gonna have a certain quota for a certain ethnic background?
No, I don't think we were looking at quotas. I think what we're trying to do, you know, we need our educator workforce to look like our students, to the degree that that's possible. And, you know, I think the effort right now is really about trying to prioritize hiring a more diverse workforce. We're not trying to set, you know, numbers, I think, you know, are good in terms of goals. I think we have a long-term goal of increasing our educator workforce by diversity by about 20%, was something that we had worked on, I think my first year here and proposed with the school committee. So, but you know, getting quotas is a tough
Yeah, okay, that's a clarification. So, can I ask another question on a different topic?
Well, you can, but everyone else wants to get, everyone's looking forward to being adjourned, so go right ahead.
Okay, so for the STEAM goals, and are we gonna have some kind of evaluation? How are we gonna look at how this goes on that?
So Angie, I'm gonna just, I don't know if Peter has an answer to that, but because this is just included as an FYI, it's
Right.
gonna be something that we obviously take up again in the fall when we're looking at the different programming that we're doing, and I don't know that the end of the meeting is the best time to get any.
That's fine.
If you want to email me, we can work on something for you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right, I will entertain a motion.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Angie,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Adam,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
Nora,
Yes.
Maya,
Yes.
John,
With gratitude, yes.
Evelyn,
Yes.
and thank you to Maya and Paul. We will miss you deeply.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So,
I will miss work. I will miss
Guys,
Marty.
too.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Night.
good night.
Oh, I'll miss
Good luck.
you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Maya.